This is a production of the Etrip English Center. Hoa Lo Prison. Historical and tourist information. Hoa Lo Prison, also known as Maison Centrale, is a representative of the period of Vietnamese revolutionary struggle against the French colonists. This place might answer your question of where to go in Hanoi. The prison is located in the heart of Hanoi capital and is known as one of the most inhumane prisons in Vietnam, with the most modern equipment at the time for the harshest punishments. Hoa Lo Prison is a symbol of the Vietnamese patriots' indomitable will and myriad sacrifice for national independence. Construction and architecture. Construction. The construction project was started in 1896 and was finished in 1899. The prison was built next to the Court of Justice and Intelligence Department as the combination against the patriotic movement of the Vietnamese. Name. The formal name of the prison is Maison Centrale, given the French expectation of this as the most secured and solid prison in Indochina. The other name of the prison in Vietnamese is Hoa Lo. Hoa means fire. Lo means kiln, which is a type of oven. Since this area used to belong to a pottery village before the prison construction, the local name of the prison is Hoa Lo. Since this area used to belong to a pottery village before the prison construction, the locals named the prison Hoa Lo as an informal tribute to the village itself. Capacity. Originally, the prison was designed to hold only 450 prisoners. However, the actual number of prisoners was much higher under French reign. In 1913, it housed 615 prisoners. In 1953, it housed 2,000 prisoners. Some detention rooms were so crowded that the weaker prisoners were requested to be taken out to avoid asphyxiation. Architecture. The so-called unbreakable prison was constructed with extra thick bricks and tiles. The besieging wall was built with steel bars and stone. It stands at 4 meters high and 50 centimeters thick. The wall is topped with pieces of broken glass and a high-voltage electric wire. Despite the varying chamber's dimensions, it all follows an identical design. Tiled roofs, solid walls, and gray lacquered floors. For maximization of security, all equipment from building materials such as glass, steel, to equipment such as doors, lockers, nails, etc. must be imported directly from France. The prison itself was divided into 4 zones: A, B, C, and D. Zones A and B were for inmates being considered criminals or prisoners in violation of prison discipline. Zone C was for the detained of French prisoners or foreigners. Zone D was for prisoners who were awaiting execution. Famous artifacts. The guillotine, known as the human killer, was brought by the French in the late 19th century to the prison. The guillotine is made up of 3 different parts: a flat wooden surface, a cutting steel frame, and of course the sharp blade itself. When the prisoner is executed, the hangman drags the rope and the blade drops down incisively. Once the blade has dropped, the head of a prisoner would fall into an underlying tank. Shockingly, after an execution, the French would even hang prisoners' heads in public places to threaten and undermine the Vietnamese people's will. Prisoners who were sentenced to be executed were detained and had to wait for an execution date. They were chained to a cement floor all day and all night and did everything in that one place. Normally, they were detained in this row for 10 months after being sentenced. However, some of them were killed within days of sentencing. The cachot. Cachot is used to detain those who were punished for violating the rules of the prison. The cachot in Hoa Lo is hell of hell, where the cell is cramped and dark. Here, the prisoners are isolated, shackled all day and night, and must eat, sleep, and defecate in the same place. Prisoners placed in the cachot were subject to death due to edema, blurred vision, skin disorders due to lack of proper hygiene, light, and oxygen. The iron shank. The iron leg shank is composed of two parts. The upper part is made of iron. The lower part is made of wood. In an attempt to escape, the prisoners usually applied a layer of fat and burned coal to loosen the hole. Hoa Lo Prison, Maison Centrale, through the course of time. The prison was built by the French colonialists on the outskirts of the city as the central prison city of both central and southern parts of Vietnam. It housed a variety of people, including political prisoners and patriots against the French colonial government. In 1899, even when the construction was not completed, the French used Hoa Lo for the capture of numerous political fighters against them. Those years after, the prison was periodically updated with the increase in the number of chambers, the expansion in areas, and the importation of up-to-date facilities. World War II. At the time of World War II, when the French lost Vietnam to the Japanese claimed the victory and replaced the French's position in controlling Indochina. Hoa Lo Prison was also under Japanese regulations. The battle between Japanese and French at the time in this area was a precious moment for the historical prison break, which story still anchored until the present time. Vietnam War, 1954 to 1973. As the French colonists left Hanoi, Hoa Lo Prison was under the control of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. From 1954 to 1973, Hoa Lo Prison was used for the detainment of spies from the South, the political prisoners who were against the Vietnam Communist Party and U.S. soldiers. American Senators John McCain and Pete Peterson were the first U.S. ambassadors in Vietnam following the re-establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries in 1995. The U.S. prisoners sarcastically called Maison Centrale the Hanoi Hilton. As there were many U.S. soldiers kept in other prisons, U.S. pilots were detained in Hoa Lo Prison right in the center of the city as a way to prevent the U.S.'s aircrafts from bombing Hanoi, given the two previous cruel bombs that the U.S. dropped in 1968 and 1972. Post-war time. The prison is continued to be in use after 1973 for criminal prisoners. In 1944, the government decided to move the prison to the outskirts of Hanoi and built the Hanoi Tower for apartments and shopping malls in its place. Only a part of the prison remained and was preserved as a memorial of the Vietnamese patriots. Hoa Lo Prison and the Untold Stories. Prison Life, 25 to 30 prisoners lived in a shared room where they were shackled most of the time and had to share one toilet. It was based on their attitude on whether they would be shackled by one or two legs. The prisoners only had 15 minutes a day to walk and take a bath. They had to stand naked around the tank built in the corner of the yard as they poured the water as quick as they could onto their body with the watchful guards and jailers by their sides. Every day, they had 2 meals with rotted rice, stunned vegetables, foul-dried fish, and rarely with tough buffalo meat like rubber or old sow meat. Furthermore, prisoners were forced to defecate within their own cells. Slop buckets were left for days and weeks uncleaned, causing serious pollution and horrifying discomfort for the life of the prisoners. The torture prison. Whilst conducting the restoration, the staff, many Vietnamese veterans who spent part of their lifetime in the prison and had asked them to write down their memory of the life in Hoa Lo Prison, in which they called the prison Hell on Earth for its cruel 100 methods of torturing. For example, the colonists hung prisoners up or down for beatings with electric shock engines at their head or heart. The prisoners were even stuffed with clothes soaked with gasoline to be burned. Some prisoners were even put into the water tank and hit from outside, which seriously damaged prisoners' hearing ability and nerve systems. The fight in prison. During their time in prison, Vietnamese patriots struggled for a better condition so as not to be killed. They also organized a secret communist movement inside the prison to lead the political will and unity. They even went on a hunger strike to fight for their request to be treated properly as political prisoners. Series of escapes. In 1932, 7 prisoners pretended to be in serious illness and successfully fled on the way of being transferred to the clinic with the help from friends. In 1945, there was a miraculous prison break involving over 100 patriotic prisoners. At the time of World War II, taking the advantages of the disorder between the Japanese and the French, political prisoners mixed with common criminals exchanged prison uniforms with daily exercises from visitors, simply allowing them to walk out of the prison undetected. 1951 marked the most famous jailbreak when 17 prisoners under death sentence organized the escape via a sewer tube. The sewer's tube's mouth was small while the grid is stiff and dense. Therefore, the mission to go into the tube to cut the grid was horrific, seeing the tube was filled with garbage, toilet waste, and medical waste. On the night of Christmas in 1951, following the broken sewer, 17 prisoners broke out of the prison. Unfortunately, when they opened the sewer door and stepped out onto the street, they were confronted by a group of patrolmen, and only 5 of them successfully escaped and survived. Life of the U.S. prisoners. Despite the ongoing debate about the life quality and conditions in the prison, there is a small yet interesting story told by a famous Vietnamese writer, Tô Hoài, about the Christmas tree of the U.S. POWs. As for the Americans, Thanksgiving or Christmas's meals usually had turkey. Even turkey was not familiar for or favored by the Vietnamese. Keeping with the spirit of Christmas, dozens of trucks were ordered to supply turkey to the prisons. Tour information. Opening hours. Opening hours. The prison is open every day of the week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Entrance fee. The prison ticket price is 30,000 Vietnamese dong per person. Transportation. Visitors can easily travel to the prison via taxi, bus, motorbike, or bicycle. This is a production of the Etrip English Center.